Good afternoon. My name is Frank Baker. I'm the chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. I want to remind you that this is a public hearing and is being recorded and broadcast live on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and FiOS 964, and streamed on www.boston.gov/city-council-TV. Please silence your phones and other devices. We will take public testimony at the end of this hearing here, although I do not see any now. If someone signs up, we will take it. At the start of your testimony, please just state your name and where you live and your affiliation. Today's hearings are on docket number 1480 to 1487. These matters are sponsored by the mayor and were referred to Committee on Planning and Development on September 20th. Thank you. Docket number 1480, message in order for the confirmation and reappointment of Christopher Hart as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2024. Docket number 1481, a message in order for the confirmation and reappointment of Jeffrey Gagnon. Thank you, I got that right, okay. As a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2024. Docket number 1482, message in order for the confirmation of the appointments of Jeffrey Haney as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2026. Docket number 1483, a message in order for the confirmation and reappointment of John Freeman as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2024. Docket number 1484, a message in order for the confirmation and reappointment of Bradford Walker as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Docket 1485, a message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Lynn Smilage as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Lynn, I hope I got that right. Docket 1486, a message in order for the confirmation and reappointment of Felicia Jo as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. And docket number 1487, a message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of W Hyatt as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2026. Thank you for allowing me to read those. I'm joined by my colleague, President Ed Flynn, and I have two letters of absence here, one from Councilor Louis Jean and one from Councilor Braden. They're unable to make it. Okay, so if there's an appointee here that wants to basically tell us what the Landmarks Commission does, give us a brief. You guys can figure out who it is, or a couple people, what you do on the landmarks, so we can educate us and we can educate the people that are following us, whatever way they are following us. And then introductions, who you are and what you bring to the table to that Landmarks Commission, and that's about it. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, just a way for us in the City Council to be able to know the people that are on our boards and commissions is why we would bring you in here. And thank you for all of your time. I'm sure you're busy, but so with that overview of landmarks, what we do on landmarks, maybe the mission of landmarks, whatever, whoever wants to tackle it, however many want to tackle it. Yes.
So thank you. I'm Brad Walker. I'm the current chair of the Landmarks Commission. The Landmarks Commission adjudicates changes to properties in the city with landmark protection status. I think that's about 200 individual landmarks and pending landmarks. And in addition, we have 10 landmark district commissions or protection areas. And I think those constitute about 8,000 individual buildings that enjoy some sort of protection that varies from district to district. In addition, the Landmarks Commission hears demolition delay proceedings for buildings that are not in one of the districts under Article 85 of the zoning code. So if a building is more than 50 years old in the city, not in a protection district or a landmark district, the Boston Landmarks Commission will consider whether that building is preferably preserved. And if it is, we can delay the demolition of that building by up to 6 months in order to give the community or the owner other opportunities to consider ways to possibly preserve or save or reuse or move that building rather than demolish it.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to add to that? No, okay. And my question for the tail, once we're through with introductions and everything, I'd like to talk a little bit about the landmark status of this building we sit in. Maybe we can have a brief discussion on that, bring people up to speed on what's happening there, what we can expect, what would be landmarked. I know it's mostly the main areas or whatever. Well, and again, whoever can get into that when we come across that. So first, Christopher Hart. Chris isn't here. Okay. Jeffrey Gagnon.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Gagnon. I'm a resident of Dorchester, the Ashmont Hill neighborhood, which has been a pending Boston Landmark District since 1978. And we'll see if that happens
What are you
someday.
waiting for, Jeff?
I don't know. I'd be all for it myself. But I've worked in historic preservation for almost 25 years now, currently as an independent historic preservation consultant, but also as a preservation circuit rider for the statewide historic preservation advocacy organization, Preservation Massachusetts. And I'm one of the 2 appointments to the commission representing Historic New England, another august organization with historic properties all throughout New England that's based here in Boston and Haverhill.
Thank you. Jeffrey Haney.
Jeffrey Haney.
Haney. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Hi. I work for Del Mitchell Architects. I live
Where do you live, Jeff? Jeff?
249 A Street in Fort Point.
Okay.
I've been there since 95 now.
Consider yourself a pioneer down there?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's changing a little bit. We have some bigger changes coming along very shortly, though.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Connecticut, went to school in Cincinnati for architecture, and started with Perry Dean Rogers in 85. And then in 95, I've been working for Del Mitchell, and we've been doing a lot of high-end residential work. And I've been presenting, I think, to the Back Bay Architectural Commission maybe 16, 17 projects. All got passed. So I sort of know the ropes, what we're looking for. Fort Point's a little bit different because of the structures that are there, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'm right in the heart of the Fort Point area.
Thank you. John Freeman.
I'm John Freeman. I live in Roslindale. I've lived there for over 20 years. I run a firm called Platt Anderson Freeman Architects. We do mostly adaptive reuse, historic preservation, and a little bit of new construction work, mostly institutional and commercial. I'm a appointee of the Boston Society of Architects, and I'm one of the, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'm one of the 2 longest serving commissioners. I also serve on the South End Landmark District Commission.
Okay. You said you worked on adaptive, what was the term?
Adaptive reuse.
So taking an older building and how you bring it up to code as far as handicap accessibility and things like that?
Well, it's really meant about putting new uses in old buildings, historic buildings, but also those which aren't determined to be historic, because there are special needs. You have to understand how the buildings were built in the era that they were built, which is quite different and also quite interesting, and be able to apply the new codes as well as put new uses into it, because very often they don't exactly fit, and it's a very creative enterprise in that respect.
Thank you. Brad, you're next. Bradford.
Brad.
Okay.
Did I get this? Yeah, Brad. I'm Brad Walker. I lived in the South End for 35 years. I've been on the Landmarks Commission, I think, for 7 years. I'm one of the appointees of the Boston Society of Architects. I practice architecture as principal of my own small firm, doing mostly residential work with 5 employees.
Thank you. And how long have you been the chair, Brad?
About 4 months.
Okay. And is it everything you ever dreamed it was going to be?
It's if you're going to do something, it's nice to be fully involved, so I am enjoying it.
Yeah, so do you think that in Boston we do a good job with that historic preservation? We could do better, or what would you, not to give us a grade, but what are your thoughts?
I think we do a very good job with the tools we have. There are some tools that could be improved, and that's been an ongoing discussion.
Legislatively?
Legislatively.
Yeah, through city council or state level?
State.
Yeah, okay. All right, Brad, and we'll have our discussion again in a little bit. Lynn, you're next, Lynn. Lynn's not here. So if I said her name wrong, I didn't upset her. Felicia, Jakes.
Jock. Fort Hill area in Roxbury. I've been on the BLC now for about 7 years. I do development in the city and in the state and in the Northeast region. What we do is the development of new construction and or the redevelopment of historic structures, mostly for a multifamily residential product with usually whatever attendant, retail, or commercial or community space that needs to go along with that to support the residents in the area.
So say that again, older structures that you repurpose for,
right, like
for
a
residential
school,
uses
right.
and
Schools, churches, that kind of
large single families even.
That would be lovely if we could get that.
Yeah.
I am the mayor's appointee and was initially appointed by Mayor Menino.
Oh, okay.
I also hold the Boston Landmark Commission seat on the CPA, for which I'm chair.
So if Menino appointed you, you've been there for longer than 7 years, though.
That is true then.
Yeah.
It's 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm on my 4th mayor.
Yeah. I'm on, I couldn't even tell you what mayor I'm on right now. I'm, whatever. Leave it alone. Thank you very much. Fort Hill, beautiful, beautiful up there. I've never really seen that much of it more. Just drive through and you don't. And then just in the last couple of weeks, I've been through it a little bit, and really, really beautiful, beautiful area out there.
It's recently gotten the designation from DLC for an architectural conservation district, so I think folks are very
what does a
pleased with that.
designation mean to a homeowner?
Well, I think what it means for the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District is that there are now standards and procedures that are in place. As you described, the area has sort of been a hidden jewel for quite some time. It's now been discovered. We've lost a lot of intact historic product over the past decade, and I think the neighborhood really wanted to try to quell that. And has worked with BLC for a number of years. I think maybe Brad's point, the Highland Park Neighborhood Association originally had a submission for a historic district that dates back almost 30 years. So what this is doing now, it is not specifically a historic district, it is a conservation district, which does not mandate to the degree for the residential homeowner, the changes and or additions, no paint color, decisions with respect to the maintenance of your home. But it really does try to monitor and manage the speculation
in main structures and things
the
like that.
speculation and the interest in the area to acquire sites and demolish and build new.
Is there any so you live in a big house, your eaves are falling apart, and you have to put that back together, which everybody, I think, would want to put it back together the way it was supposed to look, but
That's right.
you just can't because of the cost of it. So is there any benefit on the consumer side to having a historic district, or what you called Highland Park was a
Architectural conservation.
conservation?
So it's a lesser standard, but yes, I think the investment required in maintaining a historic structure can be heavy, can be a heavy load. There are programs that the city does provide, but it is usually a private practice, and it's just about the embrace of the structure that you reside in, and you would try to at least return it to its original state, or at least not do anything any more destructive to the historic presence of the property.
Okay, thank you. We've been joined by Councilor Fernandes Anderson, and actually I didn't give you a chance to have an opening statement. So why don't we do opening statements now? I apologize, Mr. President. I got carried away. We're talking about historic buildings, you know?
You were too engaged in the work,
I'm
Council
sorry.
Baker. Council Baker, during this period, I read through the bios closely, and you know, I want to say thank you to all of the people on this panel for their expertise, but also their commitment to the residents of Boston, giving back, making this a better city through their academic studies, through their career, through their willingness to serve on various boards. But Boston is a great city because we have so many dedicated people such as yourself that are willing to give back, give you time, and trying to make the city better for all. Other than that, I'm looking forward to supporting all of these when we vote on it, but I don't necessarily have any questions or anything other than that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Fernandes Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the prospective members and most likely members moving forward for your work, for your dedication, but also for your expertise in ensuring that we continue to do this wonderful work. You know what I'm going to say, right? I'm going to say, why isn't anybody black here? You're black? Oh, okay. I don't have my glasses on, but I don't have my glasses on, but from here, it looks different. All right, you look like my son, one of those kids that they're black, but they don't look black. but so obviously, you know, this is super important work, and I appreciate everyone. In fact, I nominated one of you, so I think I respect your work wholeheartedly. But I work with a lot of architects. I do a lot of studies for D7, especially District 7, with all the parcels going on, and we want this, you know, we want to do more preservation in the Roxbury area as well. I just think that obviously being more inclusive of people closer to experiences in Roxbury as well. And then when we're talking about preservation, we are talking about historical context, right? And so I hope you can appreciate my comment and always fiercely being inclusive or trying to be inclusive and moving forward, looking at people that can apply to add to this and diversify your group. That's not your job, but you know what I mean. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. And Angela Ward Hyatt. Good afternoon.
Hi. I just want to clarify, I'm a new appointee, not a reappointment.
Okay, so you're a new appointee,
Yes.
and you're a new appointee. Okay.
Yes.
We'll come back to you in a minute.
Angela Ward Hyatt. I live at 4 Cobden Street in Roxbury in District 7. And I've lived there for 5 years, a little over 5 years now. Love the neighborhood. I'm a registered architect. I've been registered for 27 years now, and I've in my 30th year at Schwartz Silver Architects in Boston, which was established in 1980. I'm currently president of the firm, and we are a nationally recognized firm specializing in cultural institutional projects like libraries, museums. We're working nationally. We have 2 buildings, new buildings going up in Boston right now, which is kind of a first for us. We usually work on more kind of preservation type buildings, so it's been very interesting.
What are the 2 buildings, excuse me?
We have a new Holocaust museum going up right across from the State House, basically, and we have a new kind of infill project on Newbury Street. So it's been a very intense permitting process for both of those buildings, and they're 2 fantastic.
And you said across from the State House for Hall.
So on Tremont Street.
So down on the other side.
Down on the hill. Down the hill.
I know where it is. Yeah. Okay.
And let's see. So I specialize in library projects. So I've worked on library, higher ed, public libraries.
Did you work on Copley?
I did not. Our firm finished second in the interview process, but I did.
I hate when that happens.
23 years ago, we completed the Hyde Park Branch Library, which is Mayor Menino had put his name on the wing, which we were very thrilled about, and that project ended up getting a National Design Award, and it was one of those projects that was awarded to the lowest bidder. It had a very small budget, and it went up against some really big projects, so we were very proud of that. I'm really excited about being on the commission. I volunteered in a similar capacity prior to living in Boston. I lived in Brookline and was very involved in the town planning and zoning committees. And so I'm really looking forward to this.
What do you think you bring to this committee that might be different from the other people here?
Well, I don't know the other people, so I don't know what I'll bring differently.
We'll circle back in a year.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to kind of learn from them.
I would think the work on the libraries and buildings like that would be something that would be different.
I love
not knowing them either.
I love working on committees where the goal is to achieve consensus and to kind of. There's often a delicate negotiation, so I think I bring kind of a level-headedness and willing to kind of see alternative viewpoints to the table.
Do you have a favorite library in the city? Not Copley.
Yes, the Boston Athenaeum, which is another project that we.
Threw a curveball at me there.
Yeah. So that we renovated that building in 2000 as well.
Yeah.
So, but it's a beautiful building, and if you haven't been there, it's a wonderful place to explore.
Okay, and if you have any sort of vision that you think may be different or something that in your work may make you have a different sort of perspective that you think is valuable, and you can tell us what your favorite building in Boston is. How's that?
My favorite building in Boston was actually the Federal Reserve Bank when I was 18 years old. So that's one of the reasons why
the one at
I'm
South
Boston.
Station?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
It was
really different when it went in. Yeah.
Cutting edge, but sort of respectful in a way, novel. But yeah, that's why I'm here. I still like it. I do like the adjacency of stuff that is edgy, along with the whole 4 Point area. That whole Boston Wharf stock, that fabric is just is so rich. I just love walking back and forth from home to there.
Yeah, the yellow brick's beautiful. The red, it's just beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do something like that.
Yeah, cost prohibitive. Council, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have any questions. Just want to highlight the exceptional resumes and academic backgrounds and commitment to the residents of Boston the men and women on this panel have, and looking forward to supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Brad, we're a little off topic here, but if you can give us sort of an overview of what the landmark, I know it's kind of just in discussions, I don't know how far along it is, about this building here, what we can expect, what will be landmarked, whatever you think.
So quick overview of process. I think there are 3 ways for a building to make its way into the pipeline to become a landmark. One is just a citizen's petition of 10 citizens. One is through sponsorship by a commissioner, and one is through sponsorship by the mayor. Boston City Hall has been the process after that is for the.
So who sponsored this application?
A citizen's petition, I'm going to guess, maybe 20 years ago.
Oh, really?
So one of the things that tends to happen when one of the things that tends to happen is a building can be a pending landmark for quite a long time, as this one has been. The commission can vote to accept that petition. The next step in that process is the preparation of what's called a study report, essentially an academic report that positions the building in its context historically, why it's important, and then in that report also develops the standards and criteria by which future commissioners would judge whether proposed changes to the building are appropriate using their own judgment, but also based on that information in the study report. We have quite a backlog of pending landmarks, in part because the production of the study reports is a budget item. And
A budget item from City Hall?
from City Hall. Recently we've been directed to try to clear that backlog, and
So is your board looking to move it forward, like, so we could landmark it?
so Boston
And-
City Hall has now had a study report
Okay.
produced. That study report has been published as a draft study report. It needs to stay in that condition for 21 days. So that's where we are at this moment. That is available online and available for public comment. On the 24th of this month, there will be a public hearing at the Boston Landmarks Commission to receive further public comment on the draft study report, as well as to kind of take in the public comment that's come in online or in any other manner. The study report may then be revised in response to that public comment. It would then come back to the commission for a vote to accept the study report and to accept the designation.
So the designation happens at the point, it's almost you accept the report, which accepts the designation?
It's two separate votes.
Okay.
First is to accept the report as amended after public comment.
Okay,
Then a separate vote to accept the designation. That then goes to the mayor for approval. If the mayor approves, it goes to city council for approval, and then it's a landmark. So we're kind of
in the planning committee it'll come through.
midway in that
Yeah,
process.
yeah. So, and if you can just, again, overview what would be landmarked, because it's like mostly the...
So currently what's in the study report, in the draft study report, is standards and criteria for the entire exterior of the building. There is a gray area at the moment about whether the courtyard is
Pun
considered.
intended or no pun intended?
I think it's beige.
Yeah.
Whether the courtyard is part of the exterior, that's something that we need to think about before I think we finalize the study report.
If it's part of the exterior of the courtyard,
Yeah.
it definitely is.
I will take your testimony on that then. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think it is.
Good.
Someone who, I was a custodian here in 1986.
Not much of the plaza is included. The landmark is designated by an assessor's plat, which goes to about 5 feet outside the footprint of the building.
Yeah.
So it's the building and the very immediate environs of the building. And then one interior space, which is at the moment defined as the third floor lobby.
Yeah.
I think we need to clarify kind of what are the extents of that lobby. Does it go all the way,
to
wall to
the
wall,
fifth
floor to
floor,
ceiling,
yeah.
all the way up? It says third floor lobby at the moment. I'm concerned that that's a little...
Which actually goes up to the 5th floor.
And beyond, all the way up to roof monitors.
Yeah.
I know that there has been public comment, and there will be proposals from people who have done a lot of work on studying this building to potentially include other interior spaces in the designation. There's been talk of the second floor transaction hall, which you probably know is part of the original architecture and the original architect's intent of a sort of sequence of public spaces from various streets to other streets around the building to flow through the building as a member of the public. Of course, with security concerns, that's a little bit different. And there's talk of this council chamber being part of the interior. It's obviously protected in large part by its expression on the exterior of the building, but there's discussion of if it's such an important part of the expression of the building to reflect literally the city government and the structure of the city government and how this room presents itself on the outside. If that promise were not fulfilled on the inside, if somebody later decided to build a mezzanine in here and make this into 17 offices,
Yeah.
There is discussion amongst the community that that would be a tremendous loss for this,
Yeah,
for this
absolutely.
resource.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thank you, everyone, for your time here today. Oh, closing, I'm sorry about that, Council. Closing statement or questions, whatever you want, the floor is yours.
Please, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. For anyone here who'd like to answer, how do you plan to work with or ensure the Boston Landmark Commission decision-making process is equitable and inclusive, specifically considering the perspective of the needs for communities of color?
This is important to us, and we've talked about it quite a bit. I'll just jump in. I think there's some other people that can speak to this too. The state legislation, our enabling legislation, requires that a property, a building, have regional or national significance to qualify as a landmark.
That the property, sorry?
Have rise to the level of regional or national significance. There is, good academic research and thinking about Black history having been excluded from history books, and if we are not able to consider properties that have local importance, a local church, for instance, cultural center, we are at risk of excluding underrepresented communities and underrepresented properties. And there has been quite a bit of work on the Commission to try to change that legislation, literally change one word, to include of local importance, or at least allow us to consider resources that are of local importance to be landmarked, because they often don't have sort of the academic backing over the course of history that other buildings might have.
Sure. Say that's the case, there's no academic backing, or it doesn't rise to that regional considerations, then what would you recommend to the community or organization that is brings a proposal in front of you and doesn't meet those requirements? But you can see that this is obvious, a racial disparity. You can see that this is obviously systemically racist, that it did not, it excluded Black history. So
right.
Therefore, the guidelines or the protocols on paper.
I think we need to get that changed. I think we need to be allowed to consider that.
And in that case, I'm asking, are there exceptions made considering that we are aware that this is a wrong that's being done?
No, because that's not part of our enabling legislation. That's a matter of legislation.
May I add something?
Please.
I think you said, you asked what can the community do? And I think very often the error is in the omission in the traditional history or the history books. And very often we've had communities come in and make the case that they have regional importance. And there have been, as a result of that, several landmarks in the neighborhoods as opposed to downtown that represented that. So that would be the advice. Very often there is a regional, and it can be a regional within that influence from that community. So that's what I would advise the communities to do, is establish that regional importance in the history and make it known to everybody.
Please describe regional importance.
I think, is there a specific definition for regional importance? It's more outside of, local would be Boston, regional would be New England, national is national.
And it makes it pertinent if it's in the books, or?
No, it has to be true. It doesn't have to be in books, and there has to be, very often there are documents, and there are photographs, there are artifacts that can present those things.
That makes it historic?
Yes.
Thank you. I guess from the commission, are there any examples of initiatives that you would say, or strategies that can be implemented or have been implemented specifically to foster inclusivity and representation, or is it just specific to the protocol?
I could just maybe add that I think historic preservation as a field has advanced a lot in the last 10, 15, 20 years, where, if you look at old surveys from the 1970s, when there was a big push to determine what was historic in cities and towns across the Commonwealth, it focused on Victorian houses, maybe fancy churches, a very kind of small subset of the built environment. And now, a structure can be historic for any number of kinds of reasons, not just super high architectural quality or its rareness or its association with a fancy architect.
Activity within the building.
Activity within the building. There's just lots of ways. And so as a field, preservation is really broadened to encompass a lot more than the most spectacular examples from every era that a city or town might have. So that's a general trend, and I think that there is a lot of community participation in our processes, and I would say that a positive outgrowth of some of the things we had to deal with during the pandemic was having hearings via Zoom that has hugely increased community participation. So the fact that you can be at home with your family in the evening, in a separate room attending a hearing rather than schlepping all the way downtown and, coming in the back door of City Hall to attend a hearing has really increased community participation. And if there's a way we can advocate to continue that participation, I think it's very, very important. And just one final thing, we're peripherally involved in the Community Preservation Act funding process. Commissioner Jacques is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and as you know, funds for historic preservation that have come through the Community Preservation Act have been a game changer for historic preservation in Boston. And the communities that have benefited the most from that are Dorchester, Roxbury, and other communities that heretofore have not received that level of investment. So the more we keep Community Preservation Act funds flowing to these projects in all of the city neighborhoods, I think that that process, that community process that those projects go through, surfaces all sorts of things. It surfaces, buildings that we might not have known about because they don't ever come in front of us. It adds other layers of community process as well that engages everybody in the neighborhood at a, kind of on the ground. And I think it's just a way that we demonstrate in the neighborhoods, not just in Beacon Hill or Back Bay or in the kind of, long-established historic districts in the city, that historic preservation is important and that it can benefit everybody in every neighborhood of the city. So let's keep supporting CPA investments in the neighborhoods. I think it's very important.
Thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that this year and the year prior, a lot of investments have gone to communities of color. I also looked at the numbers and understood that a lot of the projects in Back Bay or Beacon or other areas are just so much more expensive for some reason, hence the budget just being so much more disparate from Roxbury, Dorchester projects. And so the response has been that in these areas and the projects or the buildings itself, the structures needed, there's stained glass or there's, structures that I guess were more expensive to repair, or cobblestone or other things that just required more money. And so I would say then, for preservation's sake and for the sake of, equity, that we would be more thoughtful about quality in communities of color as well, and not just saying we did that, but that we were looking more at building more quality in our communities. We want beautiful things too, just like everyone else, right? And you want that for us, and I know that. So also in terms of involvement, I hear you saying that there's so much involvement in access now. I can appreciate that, and absolutely virtual world has changed everything. And I guess in what ways, could we think about, and this doesn't have to be a question, but if you wanted to respond, just how we could work with community members and educating folks on what exactly you do, how it works, and so that we can build out that engagement in an equitable sense as well. So it's not just I know this exists, right, so right, I'm going to show up to this meeting because I care about it. And it's just so important. I'm going to probably sum up my questions soon, because I know that this typically is a short hearing, and I can appreciate Mr. Chair indulging me, but this is extremely important, right? When we talk about, historic and identity preservation for the sake of anti-displacement, for the sake of just building quality of life in our communities, then you have areas that people will say, this is historic, especially in Roxbury. A whole lot of historical churches and structures, places that have, from the sacking of Boston, that have been, right, unfairly removed or, right, taken. And so now there are still areas in Roxbury and Dorchester area in District 7 that in Lower Roxbury that are historical, but face this obstacle of not meeting the requirements. And so I would say it's extremely important, because when people are in development meetings and they're advocating that, to preserve the community or the structure of the community, that we shouldn't build these high rises in the middle of Roxbury because you're taking away from its context. But then without enough education or without enough backing to say why it's important and why it should be preserved. And so there you have like harmful development coming in and displacing people.
Well, I've lived in Dorchester for 25 years now, and I've seen so much change that I thought I would never see in my own neighborhood and immediately surrounding where I live. And I think one of the tools that we have as a commission is enhancing our survey work. And the areas that you talk about, some areas of the city are very well documented in terms of the identification of significant historic structures and reports on them and lists of them. And some areas of the city are not. And I think of Dorchester as one of those areas, which I know the best. And it's, that's an expensive process to go through. And there has not been enough in the commission's budget to adequately survey all of the neighborhoods of the city in an equal way. So that is a built-in inequity in our process, because if it's not been surveyed, it's like it doesn't exist in a way, that you don't know it's there. And so a community might not even recognize that this particular structure or area has a specific historic value as well. So they don't have that tool to bring to the table when something happens in their own community. So that's an important tool. And I know that the staff gets grants from the Mass Historical Commission and other places to help fund that survey work, but it's a real need in the city now. And Brad talked about the fact that we have a lot of tools and we're doing pretty well with the tools that we have, but that's a tool that definitely needs to be enhanced, is increased funding for that work.
Thank you. That's all,
You good?
Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff, for adding that extra touch there, especially with the CPA. It is important that we know what is happening with money from CPA. I mean, we voted on it, and it's nice to hear the good that came out of it. A little bit of housekeeping here. Councilor Louis Jean, I regret to inform you that I will be unable to attend today's hearings on dockets number 1480 and 1487, Boston Landmarks confirmations. I hold the work of the Boston Landmarks Commission in the highest regard and believe this is a vital role in preserving our city's historic and cultural heritage. I'm eager to move the confirmation process forward, and I'm committed to supporting the Commission's work. I apologize for any inconvenience my absence may cause, and if there is an opportunity for me to participate or contribute in any other way, I would be more than happy to do so. Councilor Louis Jean. And Councilor Liz Braden. Dear Councilor Baker, I regret that I am unable to attend tomorrow's hearing on the Committee of Planning, Development, and Transportation due to a scheduling conflict. I would like to express my support for the work of the Office of Historic Preservation in the Landmarks Commission. Along with my colleagues, I recognize the many benefits of historic preservation in our city, including the environmental advantages and carbon neutrality inherent in building preservation. Kindly ask that you read this letter into the record. Thank you. With that, I'd like to just inform you, as the chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, I will be reporting out favorably the confirmations for these appointments at our next scheduled session of the Boston City Council on October 18th. And I appreciate you all, and thank you for coming out here today. This meeting is adjourned.